Hi there, Dr. Rajiv Iyer here with more secrets on how you can be successful as an international medical graduate doctor in the USA and Canada. This is our live session. I welcome you all to this live session and thank you for being here. You might be a live viewer or you might be a returning viewer. Either ways, I appreciate you both being here. If you're a returning viewer, I'm going to leave some timestamps below so you can go to that part of the question that you need to get answered for. Now, as we let people join this live session, I just want to let you know that if you need to talk to me one on one and need to get my help, then you explore all the options that is available on my website www.imgsecrets.com. So I've highlighted all the things that is available over there. Now let's get started with a few questions that actually some of you have asked on the YouTube. Now the first question was, Dr. Daniel asked, some senior Indian surgeons have FACS with MRCS. Is it possible without USMLE? What is the pathway for it? Now let me tell you, it really doesn't depend on what type of degrees they have, but rather what makes a difference is where they're trained from. Now, the place of training is actually what makes a difference. If you think about it, most IMGs come to the USA through USMLE, they get ECFMG certified. Now, this is because there are other pathways that exist. However, in my experience, most IMGs have come in writing USMLE steps and then be ECFMG certified. This is because this is the most straightforward pathway. Are there physicians who are practicing in the US without USMLE? Yes, there are. They actually are very experienced and they work on some restricted specific licenses. But if you're a fresh graduate who are looking into moving, or if you're in your mid-career who wants to move to the US, the most straightforward pathway happens to be being ECFMG certified. I hope that answers your question. Now, there was another question that was asked. How about doing courses like MPH, Master of Public Health, or Master of Science? Now, will this help get into the US or in Canada too? Now, here's the thing. These courses have pros and cons. Now, it depends on your individual situation. So, let me highlight some of the pros. Now, if you want to move to Canada, for example, and you sign up for either an MPH or an MS, which is Master of Science, then you're already in Canada. You do have the opportunity to make some contacts with Canadian consultants, assuming you're close to someone who's doing clinical work. It's not always easy, but it definitely is possible. Now, let's say you get that opportunity, then you finish your course. Hopefully, by the end of the course, you could get some publications and some abstracts, some presentations, which will help build up your CV. And based on this, you could be competitive into getting into a residency program. Now, on the flip side, the problem is you're investing a lot of time and money. And when you finish the course and apply for residency matching, there are a couple of things that could happen. One is some programs might look at it positively. For example, if you're applying for a university academic program which is heavy in research, they see you have done an MPH, they're going to look at it positively, and this might help your application. But on the other hand, if you apply to a community hospital for residency matching, which is a smaller program, they would not be too impressed by your MPH because they want mostly clinical work. They're looking for someone who is very active clinically. Now, the thing they would see is Because you were involved with MPH, you would also be away from clinical work. Now, these community hospitals might not take it in a very positive note. Is this making sense? So, to summarize all this, if you ask me, because of the heavy investment in cost and money, I generally don't suggest people take this route. Now, I know of IMGs who have taken this, who have been successful. I also know of IMGs who have taken this and are not being successful. Again, it depends on your situation, but in general, my suggestion is you're better off focusing your efforts on various other things. Now, let's say you get into a residency program and then eventually you decide this is something you really want to do, like an MPH or an MS, because now you're focused on your research track. Now, this is exactly what I did. Because I was so heavily involved with research, I needed to up my skills by having a Master's of Science in Clinical and Translational Research. So I ended up doing this, which helped my CV when I applied for funding applications. You see how you make up your application? Now, if your goal is to get into residency matching, the conversation can be different from your goals after you match into a residency program. All right. There was actually another question that came up on YouTube that one of the IMGs had asked me. How about joining a physician assistant course? Now, this IMG was referred to join a PA course by one of the agencies he's been working with in his home country. First of all, I was a bit confused. I couldn't figure out why they would suggest him to join a PA course. Now, if the agency is well reputed, they have a good track record of helping students, they may have a plan there. But a physician assistant is a course on its own. I have seen many physician assistants. I have not come across a single IMG being a physician assistant. I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist, but what I'm saying is this is not a common path that IMGs take in order to get into a residency matching. If you're able to crack into the physician assistant program, most likely your application would be very competitive because you already are honed the clinical skills, you know the system. This could be in the US or in Canada. Now you're familiar with the system. Now this would be looked at positively by the programs to help you out to say, okay, you've been through the system, you understand the system. So you would most likely, in my opinion, rank really high. And then the chance of matching goes higher up. But on the flip side, getting into a PA course is not easy. It's a course on its own. No, it's also competitive. It's not too easy to be a PA. And then the amount of time and money you're investing into doing a PA course is something you need to think about. There are pros and cons. In general, I don't personally suggest IMGs do a PA course, but rather they think of other opportunities where they can be successful and then move in to the US or Canada or be competitive for residency application forms. Now, subsequently, there have been a lot of questions regarding IMG saying, I have done a residency in X, Y, and Z. For example, someone posted me a question that I have done a residency in radiology, and what are my chances of matching? I mean, if you think about it, if you just send me a simple question that you have finished residency in any particular specialty, it's not easy to give a specific answer. There are so many factors that play into this. So, what I'm saying is, You have to be a little more specific in your question. Or if you need my help, you can always check out www.imgsecrets.com, where I actually work with IMGs one on one to help them out to be successful with their career. So essentially, what I want to say is when IMGs ask me, do I have a chance? Everybody has a chance. Everybody has it. But it depends on what your background is, where you're coming from, what your training is, how competitive your CV is, how good were you a student during medical college, now how good were you a student during residency, and if you did fellowship, how excellent you were during your fellowship. Now all this makes a difference. There might be IMGs who may not do a lot of things, but subsequently they may turn around. They may improve their package. For example, someone finishes their residency program, average student, but they really work hard. They join a research program, they crank out papers, they do multiple abstracts, they do multiple presentations. And then I know if IMGs have done this. And then they produce a lot of papers. Now their application package is so solid, and now they become competitive to getting into a residency program. So it really depends on what your background is and where you're coming from. So summarily stated, it's really hard for me to say individual opinions. If you just ask me a very blanket statement, I've finished radiology from India, can I get into alternate entry path program? Now, what you need to look into is how good your package, your application package is, because at the end of the day, that's what makes a difference. All right. There have been questions regarding visas. Now, people have a lot of questions regarding visa. I'm not an immigration attorney, so there are a lot of immigration attorneys who actually help with this question. So I just want to summarize by saying in the US, most residents come by J1. Excuse me. I've been having some cold, so because I promised this live session, I figured I might as well get this going. So most residents come on a J1 program. Now J1 has its pros and cons. The pros being J1 is pretty easy to get into. The cons is the J1 is easy to get into. Let me speak a little bit more about that. Now one is from a program perspective, the amount of money and the time the program has to invest to get a J1 is pretty straightforward. I know this because I've sponsored J1 or I've been involved in sponsoring J1 through my hospitals. So I know the process. But the con is once you finish your J1, the stipulation is that you have to go back to your home country for 2 years or you have to find a J1 waiver job. In my experience, most all IMGs I know of have been successful in finding a J1 waiver job. By the way, if you're an anesthesiologist in the US trying to find a J1 waiver job, do reach out to me immediately because someone did ask me if there is a candidate trained in anesthesiology who's looking for a J1 waiver job. Anyways, that's aside. Now, the other visa option that IMGs get in the US is called an H1B. In my opinion, the H1B visa is actually the best of the lot because the transition to green card is pretty seamless. Now, there is a third category of visa that very few IMGs get. This is called the O1 visa. The catch with the O1 visa is there is no intent to immigrate, meaning it's hard for transition to next steps, but IMGs have been successful in getting an O1 visa. Summarily, if you have given the options of the visas, then I would say pick an H1B visa. Now in Canada, it's slightly different. When you move to Canada on a work, the visa you get is called a work visa. Now, they also give what is called as a work permit. So this work permit is called a closed work permit. So let me give you a specific example. Let's say you're an IMG who have finished radiology, you get selected at University of Toronto to do radiology fellowship. Now you would be given a work visa and then you would be given a work permit called a closed work permit. If you have a spouse, they would get a work permit called an open work permit. It sounds great because it's open, meaning your spouse can work in any job. Although technically finding a job in Canada is extremely difficult. A lot of IMGs have been struggling finding basic jobs in Canada. And Canada, the good news is expecting a shortage of approximately more than 40,000 doctors in the next 5 years. So if you're an IMG moving to Canada, it is actually a great opportunity because Canada is really looking for doctors. Now, the other thing you want to be aware of is if you have a child, then your child is eligible to go to school. They also would get a dependent visa. They would not be able to work, but they can definitely go to school. So, this happens with most IMGs. They get a fellowship in Canada, they have a spouse, they have young children. So, this should answer your concern that you should be freely able to move to Canada and then send your kids to school on the dependent visa. All right, so let's see what else is burning in the IMG's mind based on the questions they have asked me in the past. All right, so those were the list of questions I had, and I don't see any more questions. So, what I want to say is continue watching IMG Secrets on YouTube, and then, as I said, reach out to me on www.imgsecrets.com where you can talk to me and book an appointment with me. You could sign up on my website using your name and email, and I'll send you a simple free beginner guide PDF which you can go through and get used to some of the basic things that you need to be aware of as an IMG in the USA and Canada. Now, this is relevant irrespective of whether you're coming in as a medical student, as a resident, or as a consultant. So, this would help you get used to some of the basic terminologies and also would help you get used to some of the things that is relevant for you as an IMG. All right, so regarding the questions, we talked about visa or the exams. IMGs have this question: do I need to take an exam? I think it comes from the fact that most people are worried to take an exam. Now, in the US, you must take, if you have to do clinical work, you must take USMLE Step 1, Step 2, and be ECFMG certified. There are exceptions, but majority, 99% of IMGs must do this. I have done this, and I suggest all IMGs do this because there are a lot of benefits to be ECFMG certified. And then subsequently, you write USMLE Step 3, which will give you an independent license. So you're free to move about anywhere in the US. Now, when it comes to Canada, Canada thankfully used to have many different exams. They got away from all those exams. So, what they have right now is only the MCCQE1 examination. So, I actually have made a video that on how to prepare for MCCQE1. I do have a video that's existing on the channel, but there is one other one in which I've gone into the specifics of how to prepare, which is about to come in the next few weeks. So what I want to say is, it does seem like a stressful exam, but it is not. You do not have to study really hard for this. You don't need huge textbooks for this. What you need is a plan to study really smart, so you know how to prepare for the exam. Focus on the keywords that the exam wants and just hit them really hard. So this way, you'll be successful in your exams. It's not really difficult with these exams. I mean, it does seem like it is, but many IMGs have been successful in clearing these exams with not much problems. So I would suggest focus on studying smart and you can be successful. One other thing I want to say is, whatever said and done, the scores make a difference. Now, you might see some programs or some online blogs saying the scores is probably not a big deal, but if you think of from a program director perspective, they have no way of evaluating you other than the scores. So they really place an emphasis on scores. For NCCQ 1, even though the pass score is 226, your goal should be to get at least 260 or even more than 280. The maximum is 400. Of course, nobody gets 400. So your goal should be to get at least more than 260, because this gives the message saying you're an outstanding candidate, and it's a predictor that you're more likely to be successful in your residency and in your career because of your solid medical knowledge. I hope this answers all the burning questions so far. So I encourage IMGs, excuse me. So I encourage IMGs to reach out on IMG Secrets. You've been really interacting well and hopefully getting your questions answered. And as I said, if you need to talk to me, here is where you go to www.imgsecrets.com. If you have any questions, continue to post here, so I'll try to get back to you with answers as quickly as possible, because I understand that you're looking forward to answers and I respect that, so I try to get back to you. At the end of the day, I sit in front of the comments and I try to answer all the comments. So some people might find their comments answered after a day, but some people might find it being answered just after a few minutes. That's because I try to answer all the comments in one shot. All right, hopefully you can get benefit from using all this information and you learn how to succeed with this intense competition as an IMG. So ultimately, I want you to be successful as an IMG in the US and Canada. In the description below, I have a lot of videos that are related to how to be successful as an IMG. Do check them out one by one. I know some people are focused on Canada, some people on US, but remember, both healthcare systems are not too different from one another. In fact, when you think of clinical management, Canada just follows the US, so the clinical management is exactly similar. And so you would either benefit from watching one or the other. And more importantly, if you have an experience in Canada, that will help you in the US, and vice versa. If you have an experience in the US, this will help you in Canada. So this could be experiences like clerkships, observerships, any clinical work, or any such thing. Okay, I wish you all the best. Stay in touch. Take care. Stay safe. I will talk to you soon.